The neon signs flickered faintly against the evening sky as Terrence pulled up his dusty pickup outside Elliot's taproom, a simple bar just off Highway 74 in North Carolina. The place wasn't anything special, just a go-to spot for locals, truckers, and weary travelers looking for a cold drink and a peaceful moment. Terrence, having been back from deployment for only a week, craved a quiet evening to unwind before diving back into the routine of daily life. Pushing open the squeaky door, he stepped into the bar, met by the murmur of conversation and the soft sound of Johnny Cash playing from an old jukebox. He scanned the room, taking in the usual scene: a couple of regulars playing pool, some folks laughing at the bar, and a few others nursing beers in solitude. Terrence wasn't there to make small talk, just to catch a breather. He found a table tucked away in the corner, but still with a clear view of the whole place. His camo uniform blended with the dim lighting, except for his worn sneakers, chosen for comfort, not style. Ordering a glass of water, he sipped it slowly, his thoughts drifting to the family he'd soon see again after months apart. His mom's cooking, his niece's excited chatter. These were the moments that filled his mind. Suddenly, the door swung open with force, snapping him out of his thoughts. A group of 6 men entered, their boots heavy on the floor. They were older, wearing leather jackets adorned with patches and emblems, their loud laughter cutting through the quiet. Terrence gave them a quick glance before refocusing on his drink, but one of the men did more than just glance back. The leader, a stocky man with a salt and pepper beard, stopped mid-laugh when he noticed Terrence. He muttered something to his crew, and soon all eyes were on Terrence. The atmosphere shifted from casual to tense in an instant. Terrence felt their stares but didn't acknowledge them. He'd experienced that kind of attention before, the kind that judged you on sight. Sipping his water, he tried to block out the unease creeping into the air. At the bar, the group huddled together, speaking in hushed tones. The bearded leader said something, and one of the others laughed, glancing in Terrence's direction. Still, Terrence remained calm, his relaxed posture belying his heightened awareness. The evening, which had started as a quiet retreat, was about to take a turn. The hum of the jukebox was drowned out by the sound of boots as the group moved toward Terrence. The leader, now at the front, locked eyes with Terrence, sizing him up. The chatter in the bar quieted. The bartender stopped mid-pour, and regulars began to watch the scene unfold with wary glances. "Hey!" the leader barked as he stopped a few feet from Terrence's table, his voice rough and tinged with contempt. "Nice uniform. Where'd you get it? Halloween store?" The others chuckled, their laughter thick with mockery. Terrence looked up, his expression steady. He'd heard worse before. "It's mine. Earned it," he replied calmly. The leader raised an eyebrow, pretending to be surprised. "Earned it? That's funny. I've seen real soldiers, and none of them wear sneakers with their fatigues. You trying to get a free drink or something?" Terrence's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. "I'm not here for free drinks or sympathy. Just enjoying my evening." The leader smirked and leaned in, his breath heavy with beer. "You don't look like a soldier to me," he sneered. "Where's your boots? Your dog tags? Bet you can't even salute properly." Another man chimed in, probably doesn't know a thing about basic training. Terrence remained silent, his eyes moving between them. He wasn't intimidated, but he also wasn't eager to fuel the fire. His time in the service had taught him when to stand firm and when to let things go. "I don't have to prove anything to you," Terrence finally said, his voice calm but firm. Now visibly irritated, the leader moved closer. "You think you're some kind of hero, huh? Walking in here like you belong. I don't think you do." The room held its breath as Terrence locked eyes with him, unfazed. "I've served 3 tours overseas," Terrence said, his voice steady but sharp, "and I don't need your permission to belong anywhere." The leader hesitated, thrown off by the quiet confidence in Terrence's words. But pride wouldn't let him back down. "Yeah? Prove it. Show us your tags. Otherwise, you're just a fraud." Terrence scanned the group, noticing their uncertainty. "I don't owe you any proof," he said. "But if you think it's a smart idea to start something here, I'd reconsider." The tension in the room was thick now. The bartender hovered near the phone, ready to call for help, and the other patrons shifted uncomfortably. The leader didn't back off. "You've got a big mouth," he growled. "Let's see if you can back it up." With that, he lunged at Terrence, grabbing for his collar. Terrence reacted without thinking. Years of training kicked in, and with one swift motion, he caught the man's wrist, twisting it behind his back and pinning him against the table. The bar erupted in gasps as the leader let out a pained yelp. The rest of the group froze, shocked by how quickly things had escalated. Terrence's voice was calm, but commanding as he leaned down. "I told you not to start something you can't finish." The leader struggled, but Terrence's grip was firm, his years of training leaving no room for mistakes. One of the men took a hesitant step forward. "Let him go," he said nervously. He didn't mean anything by it. Terrence's gaze moved to the man. "He came at me. You all saw it. If you want him free, tell him to calm down." The bartender, who had been watching quietly, spoke up. "Maybe it's time you all left before this gets out of hand." The leader, his pride wounded, snarled, "Call the cops. This guy just assaulted me. He's a fraud, and I want him arrested." Terrence released him, and the leader stumbled forward, glaring at the soldier. "You'll regret this," he growled as the rest of the group gathered behind him. "We've got a guy over here pretending to be a soldier," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone in the bar to hear. "And he just attacked my friend." Terrence stood calmly, his face neutral, but his thoughts were racing. He understood how bad this looked and how quickly things could get out of hand. But deep down, he knew he hadn't done anything wrong. His years of service, the sacrifices he had made, and everything he represented, it would all stand up against these groundless accusations. He just needed to remain composed. The bar buzzed with quiet conversations as people whispered to one another, casting glances at Terrence. Some looked uneasy, while others seemed impressed with how smoothly he had managed the situation. But no one spoke up to question what had occurred. Outside, the sound of sirens cut through the tension, and red and blue lights flashed against the bar's windows, casting flickering shadows across the room. The police had arrived. The door swung open, and two officers entered the bar. One was a broad-shouldered man with a short, military-style haircut, his face hidden behind reflective sunglasses. The other was a woman with sharp features and a calm, observant demeanor. Their presence silenced the room as all eyes turned toward them. "We received a call about a fight," the male officer said, his voice steady but authoritative. "Can someone explain what happened here?" Hank, clutching his wrist and still red-faced, was the first to speak. He pointed at Terrence, his finger trembling. "That guy attacked me, and he's pretending to be a soldier. Look at him. He's not even wearing proper boots." The officer's eyes shifted to Terrence, who stood quietly by his table, his body relaxed but alert. "Is that true?" the officer asked, his tone neutral. Terrence shook his head and met the officer's gaze. "No, sir. This man and his friends confronted me because they didn't believe I'm an actual soldier. When he tried to grab me, I defended myself." The female officer stepped forward, her eyes scanning the bar. "Did anyone see what happened?" she asked, her voice calm but authoritative. The bartender spoke up, breaking the silence. "I saw it. Hank went after him first. The soldier just defended himself. It wasn't an attack." A murmur of agreement rippled through the bar. A patron near the jukebox added, "Yeah, he didn't start anything. Hank's been on edge since he walked in." The male officer turned back to Terrence. "Do you have any proof of your service, sir?" Terrence nodded, moving calmly as he gestured toward the duffel bag beside his table. "In that bag, I've got my service uniform with my name and rank. I also have my ID and wallet in there. You're welcome to check." The officer retrieved the bag, carefully unzipping it to reveal the neatly folded uniform, adorned with badges and insignia. He inspected it briefly, then glanced at his partner, who nodded in quiet confirmation. "You're clear," the male officer said, his tone now more respectful. "Thank you for your cooperation." Hank, still seething, muttered, "You're just going to believe him?" He could have faked all of that. The female officer gave Hank a sharp look. "Enough. From what I've gathered, you started this, and you're lucky he's not pressing charges for assault." Hank recoiled, his arrogance deflating. The other bikers looked uneasy, avoiding eye contact with anyone in the room. "Here's how this is going to go," the male officer continued. "We're filing a report about this incident. If you want to pursue your claims, you can do so, but you should be aware that making false accusations is a serious matter." Hank opened his mouth as if to argue, but quickly closed it, realizing he had no way out. The officer stepped back, taking one last look around the room as the tension began to lift. The female officer turned to Terrence. "Thanks for keeping calm. We'll make sure everything is properly documented." Terrence nodded slightly, his calm demeanor unshaken. "Thank you, officer." The bikers began to shuffle out of the bar, their earlier bravado now replaced by awkward silence. Hank, still visibly upset, gave Terrence one last glare before heading out the door. The officers followed shortly after, leaving the bar to return to its usual quiet hum of conversation. Terrence sat back down, his drink untouched. The weight of the confrontation still hung in the air, but he was relieved it hadn't escalated. Around him, other patrons whispered and cast glances in his direction, their earlier unease now replaced with quiet respect. A few days later, Terrence was working on his old pickup truck in the driveway of his small house on the outskirts of Fayetteville, North Carolina. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as he tightened a bolt under the hood. The memory of the bar incident lingered, not because of the confrontation, but because of what it symbolized. It wasn't the first time someone had unfairly judged him, and he doubted it would be the last. The crunch of gravel caught his attention. He looked up, wiping his hands on a rag, and saw a motorcycle pulling into his driveway. The rider was one of the men from the bar, a wiry guy with thinning hair and a leather jacket that seemed too large. Terrence recognized him as Bill, one of Hank's crew. Bill shut off the engine and dismounted, removing his helmet and hesitating before stepping closer. His body language was cautious, almost apologetic, like someone approaching a stray dog they didn't want to spook. "Right," Bill said, his voice quiet. Terrence nodded but didn't say anything, waiting to see what Bill had to say. Bill cleared his throat and stuffed his hands into his jacket pockets. I came by to say I'm sorry about what happened at the bar." Terrence raised an eyebrow, surprised but unconvinced. "You were part of it," he replied evenly. Bill nodded, his face flushing with guilt. "I know. I didn't stop it, and I should have. Hank's got a way of getting people worked up, and I went along with it, but that doesn't make it right. I've been thinking about it ever since, and I just wanted to tell you that." Terrence studied Bill for a moment. The man's discomfort was clear, but so was his sincerity. "Why now?" Terrence asked, his voice calm. Bill shrugged, looking down at his boots. "Because it's the right thing to do, and because, well, seeing how you handled everything, it made me realize how wrong we were. You didn't deserve any of that." Terrence was quiet for a long moment before he sighed and leaned against the truck, crossing his arms. "What do you want from me, Bill?" "Forgiveness." Bill looked up, his eyes sincere. "Maybe. But more than that, I want to be better. I've seen a lot of hate in my life, and I don't want to add to it anymore. What we did was wrong, and I need to take responsibility for it." Terrence's expression softened slightly. He'd heard apologies before, some real, some hollow. This one felt different, not because of the words, but because Bill had taken the effort to come here at all. "I appreciate you coming," Terrence said at last. "It doesn't erase what happened, but it's a start." Bill nodded, relief crossing his face. "Thanks, man. I mean it." As Bill mounted his bike and rode away, Terrence watched him leave, feeling a mix of emotions. The bar incident had been a painful reminder of the prejudice he still faced, but Bill's apology was a small glimmer of hope, a meaningful step toward understanding. Terrence returned to his truck, wiping his hands again, reflecting on the events of the past few days. He knew the fight against ignorance was far from over, but he also knew he wasn't alone in it. The way he carried himself, the choices he made, could change minds one person at a time. As the evening settled in, the quiet hum of cicadas filled the air. Terrence felt a renewed sense of determination, not just to keep moving forward, but to face the world with the same strength and integrity that had seen him through his years of service. Not all battles were fought overseas. Some were fought right here, in homes, in bars, in hearts. And those battles mattered just as much.